I invested in Twitter as I believe in its potential to be the platform for free speech around the globe, and I believe free speech is a societal imperative for a functioning democracy.
Hello and welcome to the inoculation. And today we're going to talk about Elon Musk and Twitter. Is this a disinformation nightmare? We just heard Elon Musk and one part of his filing with the American Securities and Exchange Commission, where he filed his initial bid for Twitter.
Last week, Twitter's board agreed for Twitter to be bought by Elon Musk. And in the past, he was known for a very peculiar stance on misinformation. For example, in September 2020, he said he would not be getting vaccinated for COVID-19 on the grounds that he and his family were not at risk. And when the Canadian truckers' protest happened, he tweeted,
"Canadian truckers rule."
And, basically, these are some of the things that make some people less than thrilled about this planned acquisition. Mike Ryan, the executive director of health emergencies at the WHO, said that misinformation costs lives.
And the WHO actually made a separate statement on that when they found out that Musk is about to buy Twitter.
And Daiva, I think that you also told me something that you heard on the Recode podcast. What did they say about this acquisition?
Exactly. They outright called Musk a troll because he was known for saying things that deliberately annoy people. They also said that this will be a struggle for him and the new management to ensure that Twitter respects the laws of all the different countries where it operates, while at the same time following Musk's so-called freedom absolutist stance.
Okay, so it seems like there's a conflict brewing and quite a decisive situation for disinformation. So let's just look at some of the background and some of the things that make Twitter such a dangerous conduit for misinformation. And I also like to listen back into my chat with W.F. Thomas, a disinformation researcher, who talked to me earlier this year about Twitter Spaces and why he thinks Twitter Spaces, which are the audio chat rooms that Twitter set up, are actually quite a dangerous space for breeding disinformation.
Twitter loves to be very opaque and unclear about their algorithm, right, and how things get pushed to the top. One of the things we know is like when they have kind of these topics, these trending topics that will appear on someone's feed, very extremist and outrageous content tends to do very well in those to get pushed to people, right? So if you're following these kind of basic level conservatives, you'll get far-right people popping up on your feed. The way the algorithm is based, it's based on engagement, right? And people engage with these outrageous, clickbaity, with these kind of almost cartoonish things, even if it's just to say, respond and say, this is stupid, the algorithm still rewards that and pushes it out. It's also very unclear, how things appear in that central spaces tab and how they get ordered, why something would appear higher up than something else. It's probably based on listenership. It's probably based on how many people are going in. I would assume, they're listening to see if it's active or they have something saying. So if it's just dead air, it's not going to appear there.
Okay, well, that was quite interesting. So let's take a look at which features are specific to Twitter compared to, say, Facebook or other social media, and what makes these features so explosive when it comes to disinformation. So this is some information we found in an interesting article on The Conversation, and we're linking to everything on our website. So if you want to read up after you've listened to the show, please go ahead. So what did we find? What's so dangerous about Twitter, Daiva?
So first of all, Twitter is designed for fast-moving conversations, and this piece in The Conversation says that the average half-life of a tweet is about 20 minutes compared to 5 hours for Facebook posts and 20 hours for Instagram posts. So this shows that the conversations on Twitter are moving in real time.
Okay. And I think one other problem that we have a lot, which I think is not as widespread on Facebook, is that there are a lot of Twitter bots. Do you want to explain to our listeners what a bot is?
It's usually a code that generates a lot of tweets or a lot of content, and it can work round the clock and keep tweeting in different time zones.
And I think one thing we need to add, one thing we need to tell our listeners is this is a bid. The deal still may not go through, though the chances seem low. And of course, right now, we're speculating about the changes we'll see. We don't know what Elon Musk is going to do, and we don't know what will happen. He would like to do is allow users to edit their tweets, which means that bots could possibly alter the things they're tweeting or the things they're retweeting, which means this would allow them to substantially drive disinformation on the site.
Exactly. And there are some studies that claim that nearly half of accounts tweeting about COVID-19 are likely to be bots. So they could tweet something outrageous and plant it in people's minds and then alter it before any kind of fact-checking or moderation kicks in, if ever.
Right, exactly. So that seems quite dangerous. And I think one more thing that we haven't talked about yet, how does Elon Musk actually want to make money from Twitter?
He wants to switch to the subscription model rather than advertising.
Okay, so right now Twitter makes money by selling ads in its feeds. Why are subscriptions worse than advertising? I mean, it seems like, well, advertising, subscriptions, why could that make a difference?
Because paying users will be even more difficult to control.
Okay, because advertisers can't put pressure on Twitter then, as they do sometimes now. And some say that compared to other social media sites, that Twitter is actually quite aggressive in using content moderation against disinformation.
Exactly.
So that could be a huge change. And what else do you think could be a problem?
First of all, the Recode podcast also mentioned that to recoup his loans, he might want to cut costs, and knowing his views, cost cutting might result in reducing the content moderation team.
Do we know how Twitter regulates disinformation now?
So on COVID-19, according to the statement by the company, it is considered that tweets violate its policies if they, I quote, advance a claim of fact expressed in definitive terms, are demonstrably false or misleading based on widely available authoritative sources, and are likely to impact public safety or cause serious harm. So in those cases, they might require customers to delete such offending tweets, or for repeat offenders, they might simply lock them out of their accounts.
Okay, that's interesting. And they especially point out vaccine disinformation. So they're basically saying false claims that suggest vaccines contain deadly or severely harmful ingredients will lead to users being suspended. What we've also heard is that Elon Musk might be a less stringent moderator than Twitter is now, or let's say Twitter under a Musk ownership could be a less stringent moderator.
So it's important to note that there's already a lot of freedom to express different outrageous views in Twitter Spaces.
Okay, and another thing is, of course, if you have paying subscribers, they might want to put pressure on you to allow somebody like Donald Trump back on Twitter, who was banned. And as we know, Donald Trump's tweets did extremely well, accruing lots of clicks, retweets, millions of clicks, which means this is a model that would be profitable for a subscription model versus an advertising-based model. So right now what we're looking at was Twitter and actual tweets, but there's also Twitter Spaces. And these are audio rooms that allow real-time chats. I talked to the researcher W.F. Thomas earlier this year, and he told me why he thinks Twitter Spaces are especially dangerous.
The first time I realized this was going to be a problem, it was actually, I'm a misinformation researcher, and I follow a lot of other misinformation researchers on Twitter. But there was a Twitter space actually It involved talking with Nazis or breaking out of a bubble and talking with Nazis. Whether that was tongue in cheek or not. I looked at some of the people talking, and they were self-described white nationalists, right? Who were speaking, and that was really alarming for me. And that was I think Germans took to Twitter Spaces a bit more than U.S. Americans did. There's been this what I view as a false idea where, we just need to talk with these people holding these extremists or these very out there and harmful beliefs, and that will bridge the gap. Actors who hold these extremist beliefs, who spread disinformation, who spread misinformation, they rely on that. They rely on presenting things as a debate when they have no clear intention to debate anyone who disagrees with them. But it gives them this platform. It gives them this false equivalency, or this completely ridiculous belief, this completely ridiculous opinion, deserves to be treated as equal and deserves to be talked with, right?
Okay, and one thing that's been talked about a lot, do you think that Twitter will be regulated? Will it be regulated in the United States, for example?
We don't know that. I think it's more likely that it will be regulated in the EU first.
Right, and this is something that John Cassidy already said in The New Yorker, that the EU model might be something that the US should follow. So the 27 member states of the European Union, they agreed on a new law that requires big online platforms to police hate speech and disinformation more effectively. Of course, we don't know how this law will work, or if it will, at the end of the day, cut down on disinformation and hate speech. But it is a first step. EU Digital Services Act allows European governments to ask web platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube to remove content that promotes terrorism, hate speech, child sexual abuse, or commercial scams. And the platforms also will be obliged to prevent the manipulation of services having an impact on democratic processes and public security. And as the law was introduced, Thierry Breton, who is the EU's commissioner for the internal market, said, "The time of big online platforms behaving like they're too big to care is coming to an end."
This is very timely, given recent BBC's reporting that the Russian government has a huge network of official Twitter accounts. The BBC found more than 100 of them, linked to different missions and embassies, and they're not subject to the same regulations as media. They have been retweeting and amplifying a lot of voices that spread misinformation about Russia's war in Ukraine. And being government accounts, they're subject to different type of regulation, which researchers consider a loophole in Twitter's moderation policies.
Okay, so I think all in all, we can say this will be interesting. This will continue to be interesting, and it almost seems as if more regulation could be inevitable.
But it's also a very multilingual market, so it still remains to be seen how platforms can find a way to manage this huge and diverse space.
Okay, so stay tuned. We'll keep you updated on the latest developments. That was it for this week. We hope you enjoyed the episode.
Please subscribe to our newsletter, Inoculated, and to this show on Apple Podcasts, Audible, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or any other platform of your choice.
And if you're looking for transcripts will be available at our site at www.theinoculation.com. You can also find us on all major social media channels. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.
Bye for now.